Hey everyone, welcome back. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future deep dives. Today, we're taking on a topic that can seem pretty complex, but it's actually super relevant to anyone who's interested in international relations.
It really is, especially those UPSC aspirants out there, or really anyone who wants to understand how India operates on the global stage.
Exactly. We're diving deep into the world of intellectual property rights, IPR, and exploring the role of the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO.
Basically, we're going to break down how brilliant ideas and creations get protected around the world.
And we'll be using AIR38.pdf as our guide. This document's packed with info about WIPO and India's interesting journey with IPR.
You guys are going to learn some surprising stuff, like did you know India played a big role in making sure people with visual impairments can access copyrighted works?
It's amazing. And to help us navigate this topic, we've got our expert in international organizations and all things IPR. Welcome. So let's jump right in. For those who are hearing about WIPO for the first time, maybe even some seasoned UPSC preppers who need a quick refresher, what exactly is this organization all about?
Well, think of WIPO as a global meeting place, kind of like a big forum where countries come together to figure out the rules for intellectual property. They discuss, debate, really hash things out.
I see. So it's not just about setting rules.
Not at all. It's about creating a global environment where creativity can actually thrive. It's a UN specialized agency started back in 1967, evolved from an older organization called BIRPI.
Wow, 67.
Yeah. Headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, and their big mission is to promote creativity and innovation around the world. And they do this by creating a balanced and effective international IP system.
Fostering creativity on a global scale. It's a huge task.
It definitely is. I mean, think about it. WIPO's work touches everything. The music we listen to, the books we read, even the medicines we depend on. They administer a whopping 26 international treaties.
26? That's a lot of treaties.
It is. Each one focuses on a different part of intellectual property. These treaties, they're the foundation of the global IP system.
So, before we get lost in all those treaties, let's take a step back. For our listeners who might be new to this whole thing, what exactly is intellectual property? It sounds kind of, I don't know, abstract, right?
It is. It's not like owning a physical object, something you can hold. It's about owning the rights to the things you create, the stuff you think up, design, or invent.
Oh, I see. So it's about ownership of ideas and creations, not necessarily physical things.
Exactly. And there are different types of intellectual property, each with its own set of rules.
Okay, let's break that down a bit. Give us a rundown of the different types.
All right. Let's start with something everyone knows, copyrights.
Okay, copyrights. Like for music.
Exactly. They protect creative works like books, music, movies, even software. Ever hummed a catchy jingle or watched a blockbuster film?
Of course. Who hasn't?
You've experienced copyright in action.
Ah, that makes sense.
Then there are patents.
Patents. Those are for inventions.
Yes. Think life-saving drugs, cool gadgets, or even, brand new manufacturing processes. A patent gives the inventor exclusive rights to use their invention commercially for a specific period.
So it's kind of like a reward for all those long hours in the lab.
Exactly. And how about those logos we see everywhere? The ones we instantly recognize. Those are trademarks, right?
Trademarks, yeah. Like the Nike swoosh.
You got it. Trademarks are those distinct signs, logos, names, or even sometimes sounds that help companies set their goods and services apart. Think McDonald's golden arches.
Ah, so trademarks are all about branding, making sure people recognize and trust where a product comes from. Okay, got it.
And then we have industrial designs. These protect the visual features, the look of a product.
Like the shape of a cool new phone.
Exactly. It's all about the aesthetics, how things look and feel.
Makes sense. So are we done with types of IP? Or is there more?
One more. Geographical indications. This one's a bit more niche. It basically connects a product with a specific location, so it protects the reputation and quality that comes from that origin.
Oh, I think I get it.
Yeah.
So, like, champagne can only be called champagne if it actually comes from the Champagne region of France, right?
Perfect example. Or think Darjeeling tea. It has to be grown in Darjeeling, India, to be called Darjeeling tea.
That makes sense. Protects the unique qualities that come from a specific region.
Okay, so we've covered a lot about what intellectual property is, but let's focus on India now. Our source mentions that India officially became a member of WIPO in 1975. What were some of the factors that might have led to that decision?
Well, back in the mid-20th century, the world was changing. People were starting to realize how crucial intellectual property was for economic growth and technological progress. And India, with its incredible culture and growing ambitions in science and tech, saw the need to get involved in the global IP system. Makes sense. Joining WIPO opened doors for India on the world stage.
It did. But India's journey with IPR actually started even before they officially joined WIPO. The document mentions the Paris and Berne conventions.
Oh yeah, those are from way back, right?
Way back. These agreements were super important. They laid the groundwork for global cooperation on intellectual property, which eventually led to the creation of WIPO. The Paris Convention, that one's from 1883. It focuses on industrial property, things like patents and trademarks.
So it's kind of like an early passport for inventions and brands to travel the world.
Exactly. Then you have the Berne Convention, 1886. This one's all about protecting creative works, providing a framework for international copyright protection.
It's fascinating how agreements from so long ago still have such a big impact on the world of intellectual property today. So zooming forward to when India became more active in WIPO, our source mentions they signed some specific treaties, like the Marrakesh Treaty. This one really caught my attention. Can you tell us more about it?
The Marrakesh Treaty is a huge deal for making sure that everyone can access knowledge. It allows for exceptions to copyright rules to make sure that people with print disabilities, like those who are blind or have visual impairments, can access copyrighted materials.
That's incredible.
And you know what? India was one of the first countries to ratify this treaty. Shows their commitment to inclusivity.
It's really commendable.
Yeah.
Shows they're dedicated to making sure everyone can benefit from knowledge. Another treaty mentioned is the Patent Cooperation Treaty, the PCT. What's so important about that one, especially for, say, someone in India who comes up with a groundbreaking invention?
Oh, the PCT is a game changer. Imagine you've just invented something amazing here in India. Instead of having to file separate patent applications in every single country where you want protection, you can file a single international application under the PCT.
So it's like a one-stop shop for protecting inventions globally.
Exactly. Saves time, money, and a whole lot of paperwork.
That's incredible. But I can imagine that navigating these international agreements can get pretty tricky, especially for a developing country like India.
There are definitely challenges. Taking part in these treaties means you have to carefully consider national interests and what's most important for the country. But there are also some big potential benefits.
I see. So it's about weighing the pros and cons.
Exactly. These treaties give India a platform to participate in global discussions, influence international IP standards, and protect their own innovations while also being able to access global markets.
So it's a delicate balance. But it's clear that India is playing an active role in shaping the global IP landscape. Okay, before we get into India's efforts to protect intellectual property within its own borders, let's take a quick pause.
Welcome back, everyone. We're shifting gears now to focus on what India is doing to protect intellectual property within its own borders. And you know what? India actually has a pretty strong set of laws in place for safeguarding all different types of IP.
They do. It sounds like they aren't messing around.
Yeah.
Our source document mentions a whole bunch of laws and acts. Where should we even start?
Let's start with the big one for protecting creative works. You know, like the Copyright Act of 1957. This act gives creators, those folks who make things, exclusive rights to their work. Literary, dramatic, musical, artistic, all kinds of stuff. Books, music, movies, even software.
So if I write a catchy song or I pen the next big bestseller, this act's got my back.
You bet. It stops anyone else from copying, distributing, or using your work without getting your permission first. And it also lays out, legal options for what to do if someone does violate your rights.
Okay, so that's reassuring for all the creative types out there. What about the Patents Act? Our source mentioned some changes made back in 2005. What was the big deal with those amendments?
Yeah. The Patents Act of 1970, the one that got updated in 2005, lays out the rules for what can actually be patented in India and how you go about doing it. Those 2005 updates were huge. They brought India's patent laws up to speed with international standards, like the TRIPS agreement, which is part of the World Trade Organization. They also introduced product patents for pharmaceuticals. Big change for the pharma industry in India.
Sounds like it shook things up a bit. So let's say I'm in India and I've got this amazing invention. What does it actually take to get a patent?
Well, in India, your invention's got to tick three main boxes. First, it's got to be novel, brand new, never been done before. Second, there's got to be some inventive step involved. It can't just be a simple tweak to something that already exists. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's got to be something truly innovative.
Right. And finally, it has to be applicable in industry, meaning someone can actually make it or use it in a practical way.
Got it. So it's not enough to just have a cool idea. It's got to be something that can actually be made and used. Okay, the source also mentions the Designs Act of 2000. What's the focus there?
Think about the sleek lines of a sports car
Hmm?
or a fancy designer handbag, that kind of thing. The Designs Act is all about protecting the visual appeal, the unique look of a product.
So it's kind of like copyright, but for how something looks rather than how it actually works.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about something really interesting in Indian IP law. The Geographical Indications of Goods Act, the one from 1999. We talked about this a bit earlier with the Darjeeling tea example. This act recognizes that special link between some products and the place they come from.
Yeah, like how Darjeeling tea can only be called that if it's actually from that region in India.
Hmm.
What are some other examples?
Oh, there are tons. Think about those beautiful pashmina shawls from Kashmir, or the Alfonso mangoes, the really fragrant ones from Maharashtra. These products, their quality comes from the specific place they're produced, the environment, the soil, all that. And this act protects those products from imitations.
It's all about authenticity, huh?
Yeah.
Protecting both the people who make the products and the people who buy them.
Absolutely. Now, remember we were talking about the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library earlier? That initiative is so important for protecting all that amazing traditional knowledge that India has.
Yeah, it's like a digital shield protecting that wisdom. Can you explain a bit more about how it actually works?
It's pretty amazing, actually. They've taken information from ancient texts, oral traditions, community practices, all kinds of sources. They're covering medicinal plants, traditional farming techniques, even folklore. It's a massive project.
Wow, so it's a digital archive of all this incredible traditional knowledge.
Exactly. And it helps protect this knowledge from being exploited. You know what I mean? Like biopiracy, where someone tries to take traditional knowledge and use it for profit without permission.
That's really important. So by putting all this knowledge out there, it's harder for others to claim it as their own.
Right. Plus, it's a great resource for researchers, policymakers, and communities. It helps people understand and appreciate these traditional knowledge systems.
It's incredible how India is combining modern technology with the preservation of its ancient wisdom. Now, our source highlights India's national IPR policy of 2016, which has this awesome tagline, Creative India, Innovative India. What are some key things about this policy, and how has it changed India's approach to intellectual property?
This policy marks a big shift. It's like India is saying, we're not just going to play defense anymore, we're going to be proactive. They want to create a culture where creativity and innovation are valued, and of course, make sure intellectual property rights are protected the right way.
So it's not just about protection, it's about actually using IP as a tool for growth and development.
Exactly. And they're focusing on a few key things, like making sure IP rights are enforced, raising awareness about IP's importance, and encouraging people to turn their ideas into real-world things.
So they're really trying to make IP work for everyone.
Exactly. They've also made the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, the DPIIT, the main agency handling all IP issues.
So they've centralized everything to make it more efficient.
Right. Now let's talk about something that always gets people talking, limitations and exceptions in IP law. The source mentions this is a pretty hot topic at WIPO. Can you break it down for us?
I'm all ears. It sounds like a tricky area.
It is. It's all about finding that sweet spot, that balance. Strong IP protection is important. It encourages people to create and innovate. But we also need to make sure that knowledge is still accessible for the greater good. So limitations and exceptions, they're basically specific situations where copyrighted stuff can be used without needing permission. Things like education, research, or for libraries.
So it's about making sure IP law doesn't block people from accessing knowledge and innovating. What are some of the key points being debated, and where does India stand on this?
The big question is, where do we draw the line? Some people say we need broader exceptions, especially in developing countries, so more people can access knowledge. Others argue we need stricter protection to protect the rights of those who create stuff.
I see. So it's about finding the right balance between access and protection.
Right. India is right in the thick of these discussions, trying to figure out solutions that work for everyone. And their copyright law actually has something called fair dealing. This allows for limited use of copyrighted material without needing permission, as long as it's for specific things.
Okay, so India's definitely trying to find that middle ground. Now let's get into some real-world examples of how all this plays out. Welcome back. We've covered a lot of ground so far. We've talked about WIPO, India's laws for protecting IP, all that good stuff. But now let's see how all of this actually works in the real world. I'm really interested in hearing about specific cases where things get, a bit tricky. Like, how do you balance those different interests when it comes to IPR?
Let's talk about pharmaceuticals. This is a big one where intellectual property rights often clash with, public health concerns. India's Patents Act actually has this thing called compulsory licensing. It's pretty controversial.
Compulsory licensing. I've heard of that, but could you break it down for us? When does it come into play and why is it such a big deal?
Okay, so imagine there's this life-saving drug, right? And it's patented by a big pharmaceutical company. The problem is this makes the drug super expensive, so a lot of people who need it just can't afford it. In those cases, the government can step in and issue a compulsory license. This basically allows another company to produce and sell a generic version of the drug, even though the original company still has the patent. There are some conditions, though, like paying royalties to the patent holder.
So it's a way to make essential medicines more affordable, even if it means overriding the patent holder's rights.
Right. And India's actually done this a few times, especially for HIV/AIDS medications. It made these drugs way more accessible to people in need.
That's amazing.
It is. But of course, there are two sides to every coin. Some folks argue that it discourages innovation in the pharmaceutical industry. Companies might be less likely to invest in developing new drugs if they know their patents could be overridden.
So it's a balancing act, trying to make sure medicines are affordable while still encouraging innovation.
Tough spot. India's also been pretty proactive when it comes to protecting traditional knowledge, right?
Definitely. We've talked about the traditional knowledge digital library, but there's this really interesting case involving turmeric. Remember how we were talking about how it's been used in Indian medicine for ages?
Yeah, for wound healing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there was this U.S. company that tried to patent the use of turmeric for wound healing.
Seriously. Trying to patent something that's been known and used in India for centuries.
Yeah, it's a classic case of biopiracy.
Yeah.
But India fought back, challenged the patent, and won. They used the traditional knowledge digital library to prove that this knowledge was already in the public domain.
That's a huge win, not just for India, but for all those traditional knowledge systems that are out there.
It really is. Now, how about we talk about Bollywood? India's got this incredible film industry that's known around the world. How does intellectual property law protect Bollywood films from piracy? Oh yeah, piracy is a big problem everywhere these days.
It is. Copyright is the main tool used here. It protects all those creative elements that go into a film, like the script, the music, the cinematography, even the dialogues.
So basically make sure nobody can just copy and distribute a film without permission.
Right. But of course, with all the online platforms and streaming services we have now, piracy is a huge challenge.
It's so easy to just download or stream something illegally.
Yeah.
So how's India dealing with that?
It's a constant battle. They're trying to block those websites that host pirated content, and they're getting stricter about enforcing copyright laws. It's like a game of cat and mouse. Technology changes so fast that the solutions have to keep evolving too.
Makes sense. It's like a moving target. Which leads to a bigger question. How is India adapting its approach to intellectual property in this digital age? Things are changing so quickly with technology.
It's definitely not easy. They have to stay flexible and think ahead. The laws need to be ready to deal with all the new stuff that comes up, like online piracy, data privacy, even protecting things created by artificial intelligence.
It's wild to think about all the ways technology is changing how we create and share information. Our source mentions that it's crucial for India to be really clear about its stance on intellectual property issues, both domestically and on the global stage. Why is that so important?
Well, India is a big player in the global economy, and its innovation scene is growing super fast. So India's voice matters. It's got to stand up for its interests.
So it's about finding that balance again, protecting their own innovations while also making sure people can access knowledge and technology.
Exactly, especially for developing countries. And India's got an opportunity to influence global IP standards, making sure they're fair and benefit everyone. The source also talks about the need for more awareness about IP rights, especially among those in traditional industries, small businesses, and individual creators. What can be done to make sure everyone's on the same page?
Yeah, sometimes all this legal stuff can feel really intimidating.
It can. We need to demystify IP law, make it easy to understand. Educational programs, workshops, resources that are simple and clear. It's all about creating a culture where people understand and value intellectual property.
So if people understand their rights, they'll be better equipped to protect them.
Exactly. It all comes back to WIPO's core mission, promoting creativity and innovation through an IP system that's balanced and works for everyone.
Full circle. It's been a wild ride exploring this world of WIPO, IP law, and how India's navigating all of it.
We've only just scratched the surface, but hopefully we've piqued your interest to learn more.
For sure. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We've got some great resources linked in the show notes if you want to explore this further. And as always, keep on learning.